Welcome to AgriPulse Newsmakers, where we aim to take you to the heart of ag policy. I'm your host, Lydia Johnson. Our guest this week is Minnesota Congressman Brad Finstad, who joins us to discuss China's commitment to buy U.S. ag products, the government shutdown, and year-round E15. But first, here's this week's headlines. President Donald Trump says he has secured a one-year agreement with China that will be good for U.S. farmers. The administration, in turn, will lower tariffs on China and postpone new port fees applied to Chinese-made and operated chips. Tremendous amounts of soybeans and other farm products are going to be purchased immediately, Trump said on Air Force One. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed Thursday that under the deal, Beijing has pledged to buy 12 million metric tons of soybeans this season and to keep import volumes to at least 25 million tons per year for the next 3 years. The agreement keeps Beijing's purchases just below volumes in recent years. China bought about 26 million tons of soybeans in both 2023 and 2024, according to USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service. Bessent also stressed that the purchasing commitments are a floor, not a ceiling. Lawmakers have been unable to reach an agreement that would keep the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits from lapsing in November. More than 24 U.S. states are suing the Trump administration in an attempt to prevent the pause in benefits. USDA suspended the aid even though it has funds available that are sufficient to fund all or at least a substantial portion of November SNAP benefits, according to the lawsuit from more than 24 states. Rollins and other administration officials say congressional Democrats are to blame for a possible lapse in SNAP benefits because of their opposition to the House-passed stopgate spending bill. Beef imports from Argentina could rise by 4 to 5 times current levels after the Trump administration raised the annual import quota. Some lawmakers, including Congressman Jason Smith from Missouri, the chairman of the committee that oversees trade policy, sent a letter to Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer that the decision to increase imports will undermine American cattle producers, weaken the U.S.'s position in ongoing trade negotiations, and reintroduce avoidable animal health risks. The letter comes after all major industry groups representing U.S. cattle producers vocally opposed the plan. However, economists suggest the increase in imports isn't expected to have a significant impact on cattle or beef prices. After China has made no U.S. soybean purchases this marketing year, a deal has been struck for China to commit to purchasing 25 million tons of soybeans annually. We asked Minnesota Congressman Brad Finstad about the impact of this purchase commitment.
Well, it's an exciting time. I mean, obviously, we in farm country, I'm a farmer myself, we want to farm for markets, not subsidies. And the opportunity for us to see the market move, to see more people buy our products, not less, is always an exciting time. We have needed to take a broad look, and there's a lot of folks that have worked really hard on diversifying our trade partners over the years. China has consumed a lot of our soybeans traditionally, and as we've seen the competition for soybean acres grow across the globe, specifically with Brazil, we have to constantly be pushing and advancing the great products that we produce in our country. And so for us to get back on the table with China and to kind of reset and level the playing field to give us an opportunity to compete with Brazil and everyone else around the globe for our great products it's exciting.
I'm curious, they're calling this a deal, but that 25 million tons commitment that they made is when you look at FAS data, pretty consistent with the purchases China has made in the last few years, isn't it?
It is, but what we need to continue to talk about is, it's not just China. China obviously is a big player, specifically with soybeans, but some of the new trade deals that have been signed just in the last couple months with Japan, South Korea, the EU, the UK, Indonesia, we have seen positive movement for us to diversify our buying partners for soybeans and other ag products. So, it is an exciting time for us, again, to diversify and create more market opportunity for our farmers.
The government remains shut down, and SNAP benefits, which many of your rural constituents rely on, are set to lapse in November for the first time in program history. How concerned are you about this?
Well, I'm concerned, and obviously I hope your viewers know that I and my colleagues in the House voted to fund SNAP. We did that over 30 some days ago. That bill sits in the Senate, and so there has been this move in the Senate and quite frankly in the Democrat Party right now that their hate for President Trump is stronger than their love for country. And it's unfortunate that recipients of SNAP, our military men and women, our federal employees are being weaponized for a political point. And so, I desperately ask the Democrats in the Senate to put their love of country first to stop the games. Real people are going to have real pain and real effects.
We'll be back with more newsmakers right after this.
Farm Credit supports rural communities and agriculture with reliable, consistent credit and financial services in good times and bad. We provide loans to farmers and ranchers, farmer-owned cooperatives, rural homebuyers, agribusinesses, and rural infrastructure providers. As cooperatives, we're locally owned and governed. We help agricultural producers feed the world. For America's farmers, Farm Credit, supporting rural communities and agriculture. Learn more today.
I think some of sustainability to farmers just comes second nature. If you asked a farmer, are you sustainable? They'd probably look at you maybe a little funny and say, I don't think I'm doing anything that special, but it really is just what they do. We're all farmers, and our goal is taking the best care of our land, our cattle, our natural resources.
This is my sustainability story.
Welcome back. The government remains shut down and SNAP benefits are set to lapse in November. We asked Minnesota Congressman Brad Finstad if the lapse in SNAP benefits could put pressure on senators to begin negotiations to reopen the government.
I sure hope it is, because these again are real people's lives that we're talking about here. These are, some of our low-income neighbors that are, trying to make ends meet. And SNAP is really intended to be a hand up, not a handout. It's supposed to help people climb that ladder out of poverty, to help their families in tough times. But it's not just SNAP. We have military men and women that are going to be going without getting paid. We have federal employees that are now missing a paycheck, and we have a lot of things in this country, a lot of momentum that we need to keep rolling with to work on. And so it's not just shutting the government down and those benefits that are being lost, but we have halted Congress. We have stopped any progress on passing the remaining portions of the Farm Bill. We have stopped passing, opportunities for new markets for farm country, E15 year round. There are so many things on the table that we have queued up and ready to go. And this is halting progress in our country.
And you mentioned that year-round E15. We're looking at great crop of corn, great crop of soybean here in the U.S. this year. Do you think that, the lack of markets, we mentioned that trade deal with China, but, this bumper crop really presents an opportunity to move the needle on biofuel policy?
It does. And again, when we talk about, making American energy great again, when we talk about being a powerhouse when it comes to energy production in our country, E15, ethanol, biodiesel has to be a part of that conversation. We have homegrown energy opportunities right here in the upper Midwest, and we need to take advantage of that. And moreover, we need to just clarify once and for all E15 year round, and we need to do it from the legislative branch, because we have been at the whims of the EPA and the waivers and the uncertainty that creates for producers and for farmers and for the market. And so it's Congress' job to take that back and say, no, this is what it's going to be. We're going to pass this law and create certainty in the marketplace, certainty for our farmers, certainty for our energy producers, ethanol, biodiesel, and it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. It is very bipartisan. We've been able to, craft it in a way that's very bipartisan, and I think that's good for policy. I think that's good for civics. I think that's good for our country, and it's good for our farmers.
And I'm curious, you mentioned pretty bipartisan, the legislation that you have in Congress, but the American Petroleum Institute recently withdrew their support for that legislation. They're a big voice in the oil lobby, kind of that coalition between oil and agriculture. How do you think that shifts the odds or the potential of getting year-round E15 this year?
Well, I can pull up letter after letter and statement after statement where they've actually supported this in the past. And, this is politics, and this is a wrinkle in the process. But, I firmly believe, talking to producers and quite frankly, talking to oil companies that do have interest in ethanol, do have interest in, homegrown energy, a lot of different options, not just oil, that have been supportive. So I think we can still, keep the coalition together. I still think that we can, rally up the votes that we need to pass E15 year round.
And Congressman, as we wrap up here, harvest is rolling on or even wrapping up in much of the Midwest. How are things looking for you and your family in Minnesota?
So we've been very blessed. This is probably the best crop that I've been able to harvest on our farm. My dad and my father-in-law, who are the overseers and opinion givers of our farming operation, have said they have never seen corn like we were able to harvest. You know, we were blessed with over 250 bushel corn and over 60 bushel beans, and for us, that's a good year. And so, you know, with the crushing inputs that we've faced for the last 4 or 5 years, and the market that's been somewhat stale, that has really, you know, eaten up all the margins. And so for us, the volume that we were able to get with bushels has been very welcoming, and we're blessed.
We'll be back with more newsmakers, but first, Parker Litterick looks at the increase in retail beef prices in this week's Ag by the Numbers.
Beef prices have hit record highs this year as cattle inventories dropped to levels not seen since the early 1950s. The increase in the cost of beef comes as multi-year droughts led to lost grazing lands, leaving ranchers unable or reluctant to expand herd sizes. Now, consumers are paying more at the grocery store as the average price per pound continues to rise. This chart shows that as of August 2025, the price of boneless sirloin steak rose to $14.32 per pound, and ground beef rose to $6.32 per pound. The latest consumer price index released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows beef prices increased by another 1.2% in September and are now up 14.7% over the last 12 months. For AgriPulse, I'm Parker Litterick.
Trial lawyers are using a discredited report from a World Health Organization subagency to attack a safe, American-made weed-fighting tool. This critical tool helps keep your food costs down, and without it, food inflation could double. Stand with American farmers and keep trial lawyers' greed out of our farms and food supply. Fight back. Call your local representative.
Clean Fuels Alliance America is leading the way toward cleaner air, stronger local economies, and reduced dependence on fossil fuels. The industry uses more than 1 billion pounds of soybean oil every month to produce clean fuels. Biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel deliver immediate reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in heavy-duty transportation industries. We're growing better, cleaner fuels for today and tomorrow.
Welcome back. The government remains shut down and SNAP benefits are set to lapse in November. We're joined by Barbara Patterson with Tory Advisory Group and Ken Barbick with Invariant on our panel this week. Barbara, we'll begin with you. What would a lapse in SNAP benefits mean for the millions of Americans who depend on this program?
The lapse of benefits is a really big deal. Starting on November 1st, states stagger when people get benefits. So in a few cases, some recipients just received their October benefits last week. So the impacts will not be felt the same by everyone, but most states start distributing their benefits starting on November 1st. And so the impacts will be felt in a lot of cases starting with that first day of November on Saturday. This is a tremendous impact to the 41 million people or so who count on SNAP. And if you think about it, certainly if you've been paying attention to the news, there was expectations that the shutdown may last a while, but this is with relatively little notice. People started getting notice about their November benefits really just in the last couple of days with the massive pickup in news coverage of this issue. So there's not even a lot of adjustments that can happen in your budget to accommodate for the loss of those benefits. We've seen some states step in and try to fill in the gap, but really we're talking about pennies on the dollars in terms of those investments. And while they're really, I'm sure, appreciated, they can't fill the role that the federal government has been playing in SNAP. And certainly we're saying this all with the expectation that that dynamic changes once the One Big Beautiful Bill Act changes get implemented with SNAP as well. So we're seeing states try to scramble to figure out how to fill in this budget with just a few days notice on that. And it's going to create a lot of challenges.
And Barbara, obviously very far-reaching impacts of the SNAP program, but I'm curious, do you think that the lapse of benefits could be enough fuel for lawmakers to really begin these negotiations to reopen the government? What do you think that could look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are a student of history and you look at times of massive unrest, certainly a food insecure population is not a good population. That's not helpful for civic discourse. It's not a helpful environment to be in. I think it's one of those areas that I would be paying a lot of attention to. And I think it's no surprise to the folks that talk about food insecurity, that look at, the food dynamics in our country. That's no surprise that this might be the catalyst to open the government back up. This will have big impacts, and I know that legislators are hearing about it and hearing concerns and hearing a real desire to get the government back open so that those SNAP benefits can start flowing again.
And Ken, I want to bring you into the conversation. You were at USDA during the last government shutdown, during the first Trump administration, and now seeing all this play out, I'm curious your perspective there, and then your perspective as well on how these negotiations could play out.
There's been some distinctions, as you've seen the back and forth between some of the members on the Hill and the administration, between authorities and things that played out in the 2018-2019 shutdown and this one. We have a dynamic here where we never had a CR from the September 30th timeframe that was passed. So USDA is operating with different dynamics than they had in 2018 and 2019, which is their the rationale legally for why that contingency fund can't be utilized this time versus the flexibilities that were in place in 2018 and 2019. But, I do think, to Barbara's points, November 1st is going to be a significant date. And, it goes, overstated in DC that, we're facing an unprecedented situation. But, if you have a lapse in SNAP benefits going out, that truly is actually unprecedented. We've not seen that in past shutdowns. And so I think, the pressure points are going to change. We're watching the World Series this week, and it feels like we are, in a lot of ways, entering the bottom of the ninth inning with this shutdown, and whether we have, another 9 innings to go in an 18-inning game, or whether we see the dynamics change where this is kind of the end game. Everyone's watching that with the November 1st date coming up.
We'll be back with more newsmakers right after this.
I think some of sustainability to farmers just comes second nature. If you asked a farmer, are you sustainable? They'd probably look at you maybe a little funny and say, I don't think I'm doing anything that special, but it really is just what they do. We're all farmers, and our goal is taking the best care of our land, our cattle, our natural resources.
This is my sustainability story.
Regenerative poultry production is a process by which nature can actually recapture and restore the energy that is being taken out of a space.
Farm Credit helped Rahi build his dream of regenerative poultry farming and encouraging fellow immigrants to find community in agriculture.
Nothing beats a farm. I'm just pursuing happiness.
Learn more at farmcredit.com/beginning.
Welcome back. SNAP program participants are set to face new purchasing restrictions in select states beginning as early as January. We asked Barbara Patterson with Tory Advisory Group what challenges she sees for these purchasing restrictions to be implemented.
The SNAP restrictions conversation is not a new one. This is not a novel idea. It's been talked about since the Food Stamp Act was passed into law. What it does create, though, and is a lot of complications for not just the states to figure out, okay, what's in and what's out, what that list looks like, but also for the retailers to comply and communicate that with their customers. And we have to keep in mind that these are short-term pilots. Most of them have been approved for just 2 years, with their evaluations due 18 months after implementation. So we're talking about a year from next summer where we need to start understanding if these have impacts. This is not a broad-based change to SNAP. It doesn't change the eligibility of different products for SNAP. These are pilot programs to demonstrate whether or not this is an effective method for improving public health. And so there's still a lot of questions around what those evaluations look like, how robust those are, how the data will be shared, as well as how the retailers will implement. And they've got quite a big challenge for them, especially if you're thinking about retailers operating in multiple states that will have slightly different variances in terms of what is restricted and how those definitions are drafted.
Ken, I want to get your thoughts as well. China and the U.S. have struck a trade deal that confirms purchasing commitments by China for soybeans as we look to the future, but many of those commitments are similar to purchases that China has made from the U.S. in past years. I'm curious, from your perspective, what's the impact of this trade deal?
That's a great question. Very welcome news overnight out of the bilateral conversation the president had with the Chinese leader. The 87 million metric ton commitment through 2028, to your point, is going to restore a market if China follows through on that commitment. And I think right now there's a lot of pressure in farm country. Obviously soybeans is at the forefront of this with, to date, zero, purchases having been made this season. And, you've got a lot of pressure, not just from the trade perspective, but from, the input side and, other challenges that growers are facing. And it's across the economy. I mean, the input, retailers are feeling pressure, of their own. And I think that this deal is really welcomed as a relief if we see this come through as we go back to hopefully more historic levels in terms of that trade dynamic with China. But I think that, everyone in farm country, and frankly, I think, in conversations with folks in the administration, they see this as a first step. China is one piece of a larger puzzle in terms of, farmer profitability and the agricultural economy. This administration has, talked about the need to expand year-round E15, to expand, domestic capacity for other demand creators through biofuels, synthetic aviation fuel, expanding the biomanufacturing economy so that, while China will be a significant buyer, we will see other opportunities for demand creation and other markets that can be avenues for our farmers to sell into. So I think this team at both USDA and the White House and USTR, Treasury, the trade officials are actively engaged, but I think there's an even broader consideration of all the various dynamics that go into ensuring that farmers have not just markets internationally, but that they have markets here at home, and that we see the ability for farmers to remain profitable and efficient for years and decades into the future, regardless of a single market like China.
We'll be back with more newsmakers, but first, Parker Litterick looks at expected increases in Affordable Care Act health insurance premiums, and this week's Map It Out.
Farmers are bracing for expected increases in health insurance premiums as Affordable Care Act's enhanced premium tax credits are set to expire at the end of the year. Estimates vary as experts don't agree on how much more people will pay. However, there is broad agreement that the expiration will raise insurance premiums significantly for many Americans. KFF, a think tank, says that while only 8% of the general population buys health insurance on the individual market, about 27% of all farmers do. This map shows the estimated percent increase in average monthly payments across congressional districts for a 6-year-old couple making $85,000 a year if enhanced ACA subsidies expire. Based on the data, a couple living in Montana who use the ACA individual marketplace to get their insurance could see increases of as much as 400% in premiums. For some farmers, this could mean paying at least another $24,000 out of pocket. For AgriPulse, I'm Parker Litterick.
Trial lawyers are using a discredited report from a World Health Organization subagency to attack a safe, American-made weed-fighting tool. This critical tool helps keep your food costs down, and without it, food inflation could double. Stand with American farmers and keep trial lawyers' greed out of our farms and food supply. Fight back. Call your local representative.
Clean Fuels Alliance America is leading the way toward cleaner air, stronger local economies, and reduced dependence on fossil fuels. The industry uses more than 1 billion pounds of soybean oil every month to produce clean fuels. Biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel deliver immediate reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in heavy-duty transportation industries. We're growing better, cleaner fuels for today and tomorrow.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of AgriPulse Newsmakers. The government remains partially shut down. The Senate Ag Committee will meet Wednesday to consider the nomination of Glenn Smith to be USDA Undersecretary for Rural Development. Tune in to Newsmakers next week and check our website anytime for the latest developments in all things food, farm, and fuel policy. For AgriPulse, I'm Lydia Johnson. Thanks for watching.
Newsmakers is a production of AgriPulse Communications. You can also find our new content on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow AgriPulse and our correspondents on social media to get breaking news and more. For agriculture, trade, food, environment, and regulatory news, your source is agripulse.com.